Hello, everyone. Welcome and good evening to the Dr. Penny L. Hamrick Doctoral Student Colloquium. My name is Jamina Williams, and I'm the Director of Student Services in the School of Education. Again, thank you so much for being here. We do have just one presenter tonight. Unfortunately, Isaiah Lassiter is ill and not able to join us, so we do have one fabulous EDD alum here to present. And then I'm going to turn it over to our faculty moderator, Dr. Valerie Klein, to start off the show. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jamina. So I want to welcome you to the School of Education, Dr. Penny L. Hamrick Doctoral Student Colloquium Series presentation. I'm Valerie Klein, and I'm going to be the faculty moderator this evening. We are so pleased to welcome all of our virtual attendees, including School of Education faculty, staff, and students, the university body at large, community members, and partner associations, among others. The Colloquium Series offers School of Education doctoral students and alumni an opportunity to share their original research and learn from their peers, faculty, and staff. Each month, one EDD and one PhD student present their research at the Colloquium. It'll be slightly different tonight. We'll just have one EDD student. These sessions help doctoral students to connect with each other and develop a peer community that is invaluable in supporting their journeys in the program. Each presenter is also asked to write a research brief that relates to their presentation, which is then included in an edited publication titled Doctoral Student Research Briefs, published on the School of Education's website. The research brief is a way to disseminate our doctoral students' research as shared in the colloquium in a concise format with relevance to education. Typically, each presenter will be provided with 20 minutes to share their research. Since we only have one presenter today, we will be a little more lenient with that timing. Once the presentation is complete, we will then move on to questions and answers. Please save your questions for the end. You're welcome to type your questions into the chat area of Zoom or use your mic to ask the question verbally. Our speaker today is a student of mine. It's not every day that you have a student whose name rhymes with your own name. Dr. Mallory Morris is an EDD alumni in the School of Education. Dr. Morris is an education consultant with more than 17 years of experience in public K-12 education. Currently, Dr. Morris serves as an instructional designer and facilitator for Digital Promise Global. Through her facilitation, instructional design, and adjunct work, Dr. Morris centers her commitment to teacher development in the pursuit of ensuring both joyful and equitable outcomes for all students. Dr. Morris earned her EDD in Educational Leadership and Management with a concentration in Creativity and Innovation from Drexel University in 2023. Today, Dr. Morris will be speaking about understanding the value and impact of teacher talk in professional learning communities. So, with that introduction, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Morris and let her share her screen and take it from here.
Thank you. This is very exciting. One, to have my supervisor, Val, as the moderator for this, because she was essentially my moderator the last time I talked about my research. But I'm just very excited to be able to spend this time with you all. I'm excited that you're interested in even hearing about what I studied. And hopefully you'll also be interested in hearing about what I want to do with it, and that you'll be willing to share some thoughts or insights or feedback that you have. So like Dr. Val said, my name is Dr. Mallory Morris. I am a Drexel University alum, and I'm here to share with you the findings of my research about teacher talk in professional learning communities. And so I'll jump right in. You get it. There's a table of contents, but let's dig into this. What I think is really important to share when I talk about this particular study is how close it is to my heart. What you see in this image here are two index cards that I wrote to myself while I was an assistant principal. The first one in yellow, I wrote when I was an assistant principal at an elementary school. And it was something that I needed to remind myself. I was working with kids that were younger than what I normally worked with. And I was challenged as kind of a middle school person used to dealing with adolescent energy. Now I'm around younger kids. And I was noticing that there was just a very different kind of energy around how adults were talking to children in the elementary school. in particular, I was hearing a lot of negativity towards the students. A lot of, you messed up, you did this wrong, you need to be different. And it was something that was very challenging to me. And I was like, I don't like this. I don't want to be like this. And so I wrote myself a card that I looked at every day on my desk. Then a few years later, I transitioned to an AP position at a middle school. And so I'm like around my people again, but now I'm sitting in these grade level meetings and we are having conversations about students. And once again, I was hearing conversations in a way that I didn't pick up when I was a teacher, and they were all my peers. Now that I was an evaluator and now that I was responsible for how these adults interface with the students we served, my ears perked up because I realized once again, I was hearing a level of negativity around our students that I didn't personally feel was helpful. And so you'll see here is that I have these 2 index cards that I wrote to myself and I kept them on my desk. And then I have this Instagram post, you can see the framing there, where I wrote this message to myself. This was back in, I want to say 2016, I wrote this. So this has sat with me for a long time. This isn't something that I came up with on a whim. This has been a part of my career as an educator. And so I just want to make sure you had a little grounding about why this is so important to me. But let me walk you through the study that I did. So as I've already named, the problem that I was looking at was this notion of teacher talk. But at the root of it is the reality that our beliefs, our behaviors, and our biases are all going to impact how our students perform academically. And what we say about our students and what we say about who we are as teachers, what we say about our profession, those conversations, those words communicate the beliefs that we hold as educators. And you'll hear me like adding myself into this research because even though I'm not in the classroom right now, it's still very important to me that I hold space and that I hold some empathy for what it means to be an educator. So I grounded this in just the existing research around that our beliefs, our behaviors, and our biases are all going to have an impact on how we work with and interface with other folks. And the words that we say are going to be an expression of those beliefs that we hold. And so to dig in a little bit further about just like the purpose behind this research is that I wanted to look at, how does teacher talk, what we're saying about students, what we're saying about our professional practice, how is that influencing instructional decisions? Like that was a question that came up a bit. And then another thing that was grounding this work was an exploration of the beliefs and the expectations that teachers have about students and how that's embedded in the kinds of conversations and the words that we're using as educators. And then this other piece of research that informed the work here is the understanding that there is a very distinct connection between the positive and negative discourse that teachers engage in and the beliefs that they hold. Like this isn't new research, right? Our words representing what we believe, how we feel, this isn't new information. And I saw that even in my literature review, and you'll see here, and I won't dig too deep into it, but I really grounded my literature review in understanding teacher beliefs and what that tells us about their beliefs around their own backgrounds, around their understandings of race, their beliefs about student achievement, then teacher expectations, and central to that are teachers' sense of responsibility towards students and towards their students' outcomes. And then the idea of teacher talk, like what are teachers talking about in professional learning committees? And just the notion of like deficit talk and deficit thinking, what role does that play in the teaching experience? And so, like I said, the literature is very clear about the connection between we have beliefs and thoughts and expectations, and those impact how we act. But there's a distinct gap in where that shows, whether or not that shows up in what we say and what we talk about. And so that was the gap that I pursued in this particular study. So how can teacher talk reveal how does teacher talk reveal the biases and expectation that the research already proves influences student outcomes? So I was guided by these 3 questions here. In what ways do middle school teachers talk about students during their team meetings? In what ways do middle school teachers talk about their professional practice during team meetings? And then what does that teacher talk inside the PLC reveal about teacher beliefs and expectations about their students and their professional practice? I won't belabor you with this, but I will name that this study, this was a phenomenological study, so very much an opportunity for me to hear stories. I wanted people to share their experiences with me. I wanted to engage in discourse because that's at the root of this study. I had these kind of big bucket findings where I was seeing this connection between teacher beliefs were influencing the teacher's sense of responsibility, and that yielded an understanding about the teacher talk that they were engaging in, the support they felt or did not feel that they received as teachers, and then this notion of teacher autonomy. Whether or not they had the agency and freedom to act in what they believe to be their best interest as professionals. And then all of these things were leading toward this big aha of this, there's a misalignment in the teaching profession between what teachers believe and what it is that they're able to actually do and focus on in the professional learning communities. And right now you might be thinking, but Dr. Mal, this wasn't the direction of your research. You said you were going to PLCs to learn about what teachers are talking about and what that reveals about beliefs. And now you're talking about like teachers feel disgruntled and there's no autonomy and they're frustrated with their profession. Exactly. I went in, like most researchers do, with an assumption that I was going to sit in PLCs and I was going to hear people talking and I was going to be like, aha, gotcha. We're saying negative things about kids. Let's examine that. And due to, constraints around schedules and calendars and just what was going on the school campus that I was working at, the reality is that I couldn't quite execute it that way. And so I narrowed my focus on just interviewing as many middle school teachers that participate in PLCs as possible. And in just sitting there and joining them and hearing their conversations, that's what brought me to these big ideas, these results. And so while I went pursuing something else, I came away with this rich understanding about teachers. And like I said earlier, right, it's very important to me that I continue to identify as an educator, as a teacher, because that allows me to maintain a sense of empathy for the position that they're in. And I am human enough and willing enough to admit that I went into this like ready to be like, see, we got to do better. And I was challenged by the results that I found. And so I'm going to break down these results for you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the implications of these results that I found. And then if we have a little bit of time, what I want to get into is what I'm still hoping to do with this information, because I've been hanging on to it for a little while now. So like I said, I talked with 11 middle school teachers. I heard their stories through these semi-structured interviews, and I distilled that into these findings that you see here, started identifying the relationship between these, and that yielded these 3 results. The first one, that students are not at the center of teacher conversation in professional learning communities, which kind of just, blew the lid off of the point of my research. That they were not even talking about kids in their PLCs. The other, and we'll dig into that a little bit more in a moment. The other thing that came up, I did interview a lot of Black teachers. The district that I conducted the study in is heavily Black and brown students. And the staff also is majority Black teaching staff. So of my participants, of the 11, only 1 identified as white and a second person identified as West Indian. So what came through out of the stories from these Black teachers was a significant interest and sense of responsibility toward working with Black students. That came up in their conversations and in their retellings of their experiences about their work in their PLCs again and again and again. And then the third piece that came through as I spoke with teachers about their experiences in their professional learning communities is that while this group of teachers has a very high regard for their students, they genuinely like them, love them, want want what's best for them. They, at the same time, did not feel supported, nor do they feel trusted by administration to operate in the best interest of their students, given their current job expectations. So once again, I just want to be clear about this framing here. I went in to hear them and to see, like, what are we saying about our kids? How is that impacting how we're working with them? What is that revealing about our beliefs? And when I listened to teachers talk, what I heard was teachers frustrated with the system in which they work, to the point where they don't feel like they can actually focus on their students. So while this study neither proved, disproved, exposed, or uncovered deficit talk in the PLC, the reality is that teachers weren't even in position to talk about students. And that in and of itself was kind of a scary thought, that in the professional learning community, where talk about students in order to pursue positive outcomes for students wasn't even happening, that they were dealing with managerial tasks, and they were dealing with mandates, and they were dealing with fulfilling responsibilities that were being passed down to them from people up above them. And at no point in time were they able to center their actual students in the middle of the work and in the conversation. So after I engaged in all of this dissection of the data, what I walked away with were three big ideas about the implications around professional practices, and then three ideas about just the future of this research. And the three big ideas, the first one should not be a surprise at all. It's the reality that we got to implement and maintain effective professional learning communities. Like I named, the teachers who were participating in this study, the PLCs that they were a part of were not true PLCs. They were really just kind of dumping grounds for administration to get all of the people in one grade level in one space so they can pass along information or share a new update or give a new expectation for how they're supposed to be doing something in their classroom. It wasn't a time for teachers to actually be engaging with one another, to be learning from one another, to be examining student work together, to be making instructional decisions together. So just getting clear about how a PLC should function and provide additional support there was a huge implication. The second one was around building teachers' cultural capacity to support all teachers' capacity to work with and advocate for all students. And so what I mean by this is, as I looked at the research that informed this study, the reality is that we engage in deficit talk often because we don't have a sense of we don't have a historical background or understanding of folks who are not like us, right? And so the more that we can make sure that all teachers are equipped with an understanding of who they're working with and the context in which they're working with them, the better off these teachers will be in better serving students, no matter what their background or what communities they come from. And then the third one was enacting policies and practices that support teachers and student outcomes. And so this circles back to the idea that teachers don't feel supported and that teachers really felt like they didn't have a lot of autonomy or ownership over the work that they do. And they felt like they were just, checking things off of a list on behalf of their administration. And so ensuring that we have policies and practices in place from top down, state level down, right? With our testing practices and with our expectations around how teachers spend their time. All of these are ways in which we could maybe retool the system in order to ensure that the pieces that we put into place are actually for the benefit of positive teacher and student outcomes, and not just because they maybe make sense from a managerial point of view. And then as far as implications for future research, there's a lot of just good, rich stuff that could come out of this. First one being, how about we do the study that I originally wanted to do? So I think it's still worthwhile to explore the content of teacher talk in the PLC and in informal spaces through like an ethnographic case study, right? Like really sit there and listen without the interview component where folks, have already processed their experiences and are relating back to you their interpretation of things, but rather taking things as they are and then making sense of them with the teachers. I think that's still a beneficial route to take. And then examining our current local, state, and national policies to determine what influence, if any, they have on producing positive student outcomes. That serves our previous point around, we've got a lot of practices in place that actually don't serve our kids very well. We need to do an audit of that, and we need to see what works and what doesn't work. And then lastly, I think it's an interesting direction to take to research alternative teaching models to mitigate the stress of growing teacher workloads and the subsequent reduction in teacher job satisfaction and the rising attrition rates. We all know here who are in education that this profession, while incredibly noble, is very difficult. And folks are very quick to leave it if they feel like they aren't doing the good work that they thought they could do, that they could accomplish. And when they feel like they aren't respected or trusted as a professional. And so finding ways to make this job less of a jack of all trades and a master of none, but allowing teachers to maybe have mastery in certain ways and certain aspects so that they can better serve students, I think would be a great direction for us to take. So I know I'm here at the end of my time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump forward to my questions. And then if we have a little bit of time, if Dr. Val will grant me that, I do want to put before you an idea that I have been toying around with since I presented this research a year ago, that I would love potential additional feedback on. But I'll throw these in front of you. I'll just start with the first one and you can read the rest of yourselves, but I want to open the floor up for this. For practitioners, if you're on the call and you are currently in the classroom or you're connected to classroom teachers in some way, I'd love to know your thoughts on how you see this research or in subject matter aligning with the current trends that you're seeing in the field, on the ground. So I'll pause there. I'll open the floor and I'll allow Dr. Val to do what she's got to do as a moderator.
You're doing great, and you still have 2 of your 20 minutes.
Look at me.
But
I
it looks
learned
like
from you.
it looks like we have a couple of questions, or at least one question. So maybe we can start with the question.
Yeah, go for it.
And then, or answer, I don't know. And then if you want to chat a little more, that's fine too.
Awesome. All right. Tamika?
Yes, and it's not a question so much. I did want to respond to your question. First of all, beautiful work. I love your transparency, and then in that your original research got sidetracked. I really appreciate that. But I do think your original idea is definitely needed, because even from the perspective of the fact that teachers don't even get to really talk about kids. I've been in the classroom and still am in the classroom. This is my 24th year, and the mandates that come and just everything that gets thrown at us, and we only have 25 minutes to meet with our peers. There's really no talk about kids. It's mostly, what field trip are we taking them to? What, what's coming down the pike that we need to be aware of. So if we're trying to change the system and do better by our kids, teachers need to be talking about kids and how we can help them achieve the goals that they need to achieve. So I hope you do get to do some of that research, because that would be amazing to hear.
Thank you. I appreciate you for sharing that. And not that I needed it, but for validating that what I was seeing, you're like, oh, I'm seeing this too. It's frustrating. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I welcome any other thoughts or questions. I'm game. I'm open. Okay.
Got some comments in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lassiter. Yeah, you've seen this as well. Yeah. It's a very frustrating thing to bear witness to. And so while folks are maybe thinking about what profound things you'd like to share with me, I will put in front of you the place where I've really kind of placed my attention. And I'll be very honest, I am, a full-time educator, right? I'm not on campuses, but I do support teachers and school leaders in my work. And but the idea of our professional learning communities being effective places where teachers can actually engage in meaningful conversation around their students and how to best support their students has still been with me. And I'm still thinking about ways in which, in the work that I do, can I find an avenue to kind of push this work forward? And so my first recommendation around implementing and maintaining effective professional learning communities is kind of what's driving this idea behind the scenes for me. And that's a quote from one of my participants around, who explicitly said, like, the PLCs should be teacher-centered and should be places where teachers can create together and can kind of collaborate and work together. So I'm like, that's not even from the research. That's like a real life person who's saying, I'm not getting what I need, and this is what I need from the PLC. And as you've already named, there's a consequence if we're not talking about students in our PLCs, right? This absence of talk, on the one hand, could mean that we're missing that there are deficit mindsets, simmering in the space. But also then we don't have opportunities to kind of bring those things to light and kind of expose them and clean them up and help kind of move the entire teaching kind of community forward. And so my response to this is, what if I built a kind of PLC toolkit specifically around equity talk? And it very much takes on the frame of the impact cycle for those of you who are instructional coaches or work with or do any coaching, right? Where we have identified, we have learned, and we have improved. And so it's the same idea, right? Identifying, which would be the establish and evaluate. Like, let's get a pulse check on like who we are. I recognize that this kind of conversation about like our talk and the nature of our talk is not one that we have often, but the moment that you kind of point it out, people go, oh yeah, now that you've said it, I'm realizing that this is what I hear, or this is what I've noticed. And I think this is the kind of thing that needs to happen as well in PLCs. I think we just need to say it, point blank, period, put it out there, give teachers an opportunity to engage in some self-reflection and some study and some practice around this work. So what I'm building, and it's still very much early days, it's just like a bunch of pages of ideas and activities that need to be collated and cleaned up and organized. But kind of taking PLCs through a cycle of establishing, like, why are we here? Why is this significant or important? Having them engage in some self-reflection through like an audit of themselves, an audit of the team around their talk, engaging folks in some equity roundtable discussions just to get them thinking about like the why behind this. And then moving into what PLC should be, which should be learning spaces. And so that being a combination of both independent, self-reflective, self-guided study, also community-based through like book studies, but really, I think the big work there is like ensuring that teachers have an avenue by which they can learn about their communities and learn about themselves. So guiding them through conducting empathy interviews, helping them to understand the nature of learner variability, funds of knowledge that students bring with them, that our communities bring with them. And so giving them some space and structure around learning and reflecting on how that information impacts how they view their students, how they view themselves, how they view their role as a teacher. And then moving into that apply phase where we practice, right? The PLC should be a place for practicing. So practicing things like courageous conversations, practicing giving asset-based feedback, practicing how to identify and respond to deficit talk, right? Like really just putting the things on display and actively noticing, naming them, and responding to them. And then taking us right back into evaluate. So now that we've practiced some things, now let's take a look at where we are, where we have been, what do we want to work on next? What new goals do we want to set? What do we need to learn about? And kind of moving through this cycle. But I imagine this as functioning as like a toolkit that could, that a TLC could take on and adopt over maybe like a 6-week cycle, that they could either guide themselves through or a campus administrator could guide them through, but it really being just a tool to organize the learning around this. Because I think any of us who have been on campuses, especially when you've been on a campus that's been focused on doing equity work, it often is like a hit it and quit it, right? They bring it up for a couple of staff meetings and then everybody kind of drifts away. And the PLC really should be a space where folks are engaging in like cyclical learning cycles where we keep the important things at the center. So that's the idea that I've been cooking up, that I've been thinking about, and that I'm going to in the work that I do now, I'm already trying to build in little bits and pieces. So like the equity roundtable discussions, I've already conducted with a group of instructional coaches I work with, and I'll be conducting it with a group of school leaders and district leaders that I'll be with in May. So I'm trying out little pieces of the toolkit that I want to put into it, but that's where I'm at. I'm trying to make my study as applicable as possible because that's who I am. I am a practitioner through and through. So I'll open the floor again if anybody else wants to share anything or ask any questions or share your thoughts.
I could share. Hi, I'm
Hi.
Karina. You were cracking me up. You said hey and quit it. I had to jump in. But thank you for your presentation. I'm in the PhD program. I was a former teacher, and so you were just bringing me back to my time in the classroom, and yeah, that navigating my relationship with my students as well as with my colleagues. And you mentioned that like most of your teachers were Black and brown, were Black, your students were Black and brown, so they kind of there's some similarities in their in some of their identities. And so I would be curious to know moving forward as you continue to expand how that might differ in spaces where the PLC is made up of very diverse teachers that that are different across age, across years of experience, across race and ethnicity or religion, and also with students. How are the teachers talking, and do they have those same positive assumptions about their students that don't look like them, that are also very different? So yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, Karina. Yeah. I think there's so much here. And Tamika, you can absolutely look more at my study. You can go to Drexel's website, you can type in my name in the search for dissertation, and you can pull mine right up. I just want to thank everybody for your for being here and listening to me. Dr. Val already knows I like being listened to. So this is really good for my ego. I'll ride this high for the rest of the week. If you want to get in contact with me, if you want to connect, there's my email address, malloryarnell@gmail.com. It's my name. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, ma'am23. And we can absolutely connect, talk further. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing your work with us tonight. I want to thank everyone for attending the Colloquium series. The 2023-24 Colloquium series will now be available the first Monday of the month, same time, same place, 7:30. And the next event will be May 6th. So I hope to see many of you there. And Dr. Morris, thank you very much. It was good to hear about your research and how you're thinking about it now, a year later.
Thank you.